The Memphis Grizzlies primed to make a big move, potentially Marcus Smart, the guy on the way out. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Subscribe to the channel. You know, right now, 80% of our viewers are not subscribed to the channel. We're loving all the viewership that we've got coming in here. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications so you stay in the know here with the Basketball Bulletin. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Donnie Freeman, a.k.a. D-Free. Donnie, Memphis is this team that this season they've been hit hard with injuries, but they've managed to hang in there this time, not like last season. And now they could be a really interesting team out on the trade market, particularly with Marcus Smart and his contract. We're going to take a look at him. I think this Grizzlies team has the potential to be very, very good here if, and it's a huge if, they can get everybody healthy.
Yeah, that's definitely been their main issue over the last couple of years, being able to get guys in the court. Marcus is an interesting player for them to try to flip, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. I just got to say that I saw what you titled this room, and it gave me a chuckle, where you called it Marcus Smart.
I had to throw in from my buddy Keith Smith. I wrote out the name Marcus Smart as though it was being pronounced by someone from Boston because he was a Celtic for so long.
It gave me a good chuckle.
He is wicked smart. The emergence of, so this is from Brett Siegel of Clutch Points. The emergence of Scottie Pippen Jr. and rookie Jalen Wells has league personnel. Jalen Wells has been great on the wing, by the way, for the Grizz. Has league personnel wondering if the Grizzlies would consider moving former depoy Marcus Smart. 1 year left on his contract after this season. $20 million in money to go play with out there on the trade market. And the speculation here is that they could utilize a high profile player by trading Marcus Smart. So I guess first let's take a look at the production from Marcus. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty, but he's been out with injury. But still, it's not pretty this season. You look at 20 minutes per game right now, started 5 of them. They're essentially having to use him as a 3 because he's sharing the floor with John Morant, Des Bane, with John Morant when he's healthy, but Des Bane and then Marcus Smart out there on the floor. So it's a kind of a 3-guard rotation. So even though he's listed as a point guard, they're really using him more as a 3. 3.7 assists, just 1 steal, which is low for him, obviously. 7.4 points. The production, not what we're used to seeing from him, but again, is recovering from injury. Former Defensive Player of the Year. That I felt like that season, that was a team award for that Celtics team. They were a really good defense, and then Marcus Smart was just the best. I don't think he was really the best defender in the NBA, that he was the best defender on a really good defensive team, and that got him the award. Not to say he's a bad defender, just not that carries with it a lot of weight, right? Defensive Player of the Year. He was very good, but I discount that one a little bit. But I still think he's a really good defensive player. That could certainly help a team. I think teams would be interested. If you're Memphis, though, what do you need? What do the Grizzlies want if they're going to trade Marcus Smart?
Yeah, that's a really tricky question. I guess it depends who you ask. But I do think that, they're going to try to upgrade this spot because Marcus is not giving them box score production. He's not getting for $25 million. He's not giving them, or $20 million, excuse me, not giving them $20 million of production currently with those stats. So I do think that they need to upgrade that spot. And I think that part of this also is largely because of, like you mentioned earlier, the emergence of some of the other players like Scottie Pippen. He's been able to kind of get some of those guard minutes as well. So it's keeping Smart away from needing to play the primary ball handler position. So if that's the case, if he's going to give you 12, 5, and 5 is what I believe that Scottie's giving off of the bench, then you can kind of just move on here and ideally get a wing back and somebody that could probably play up for you if you need that. A 3-4, in my opinion, would be a good pickup.
Yeah, I think a 3-4 would be phenomenal for this team. You look at Smart, $20.2 million this season, $21 million next season. Having that extra year on the books, I think, will be a problem for some teams. Some teams won't want to take on the other extra year of salary. But for a guy like Smart that has the defensive chops that he does, I think you could see teams say, you know what, let's go get a guy like him. And this is where actually I think I could see like a 3-team trade making sense. Where Smart winds up with another, because most contending teams aren't going to ship something to help the Grizzlies contend, but a 3-team trade could make some sense in this scenario. We talked a little bit off the air here about some of the names that could be out there. Like I look at say Marcus Smart. Could you, if they're really looking to add an impact piece, would a Marcus Smart and Brandon Clark base get you to Brandon Ingram? with the Pelicans. Would you be interested in something like that? Salary's not quite there on the Grizz side, but you're pretty close. Do you think that's a decent base to go try to get Brandon Ingram?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a decent base. It's also part of a larger discussion in terms of like the Pelicans, what their plans are, especially now that the
Sure.
report came out that they're not even close to getting Zion back. They're starting to fall too deep to be able to recover this
Right.
year. It's just kind of a weird situation. Do they want to take back that extra year from Smart here? I'm not so sure. But if you wanted to try to get Brandon, then yeah, that's probably one of the. I mean, I currently assume that they don't have any offers for Brandon, because if they had some, they might have. If they were decent anyway,
They
he
probably would have
probably
done
would
it.
have be there. Yeah, they probably would have pulled the trigger prior to the season half if they were decent. So I think that's one of the things that they could do, and I think Brandon would fit pretty well on this team as another guy that can handle the ball, could create, and can play up for them if they need him to. And hopefully on this team, he would lock back in on the defensive end. Having
Yeah.
watched him earlier on in his career, I feel like that part of it, as he started scoring more, kind of went away for him. But I do think that on this team, that could be an interesting piece. The only thing I don't love is, and I'd have to look at the advanced numbers for Brandon and his teams, but I kind of feel like he plays at a slower tempo than what this
Sure.
team should be trying to
Yeah.
play at. So I don't know if that part of it fits great, but on paper, I think he'd be a nice fit.
And the Grizz have changed their offense this season where they are now
Yeah.
flying up and down the floor. And so I think that's a fair concern. Does Brandon Ingram play at the same pace as what
Yeah.
Memphis wants to play? But in terms of an impact piece, like, okay, specifically if we're looking at threes, Jimmy Butler, but again, he's not going to play at that pace. I don't know if he's actually going to be on the trade market or not. I actually think the guys that are not the biggest names are better fits. Like I mean, my goodness, Dorian Finney-Smith would be a great fit
Absolutely.
in that slot for now, and he makes even less than Marcus Smart. But Dorian Finney-Smith, maybe there's a 3-team trade there where the Nets get some kind of future capital. Cam Johnson, again with the Nets. We're going to talk about the Nets a lot because they've got so many different types of players. Jeremy Grant, even if we want to get, again, does Portland want Marcus Smart? No, but so that's where you get into a 3-team trade. Could a Jeremy Grant be a fit there? Maybe not on the defensive side. Kyle Kuzma is another guy with the Washington Wizards. Maybe there's a fit there again in a 3-team trade. So I actually like those guys better from Memphis than the big name like a Brandon Ingram, a Jimmy Butler. There's just not a lot of true two-way wings that are that kind of like star-ish level or star adjacent level
Mhm.
that are available or that really makes sense, I think, for Memphis.
Yeah, I do think that's an element too, is like if they could potentially put together a 3-team trade, maybe they wind up pulling somebody that we didn't think was on the market from a team that's underperforming. And maybe it's like a all-star-ish player. Maybe it's not some like, all-star, bona fide all-star, superstar type player or anything like that, like a Jimmy Butler would be, particularly later on in the year for him specifically. But maybe they have something like that happen. I wanted to ask you also, we haven't brought him up. Do you think there's any reason for these guys to try to go and get somebody like Levine on the team? I think he would fit offensively, but obviously there are defensive concerns. But you've got a DPOY back there, so maybe that helps out a decent bit.
Yeah, I mean, you do have Jaren Jackson Jr. unjustly Defensive Player of the Year again. That's my own bias coming in, but yeah, I mean, Zach LaVine can certainly score the ball, but I think you need somebody who's more strong because Ja can score, Des Bane can score.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, are you tempting fate by taking Des has dealt with injuries, Ja has dealt with injuries, everybody on this Grizzlies team has dealt with injuries, and then you're adding Zach LaVine to that team? And he's dealt with tons of, I mean, you're just asking for a playoff implosion as everybody sprains their ankle at the same time, right? I mean, these guys, how many injury prone guys can you put on one team? That would be my concern with Zach LaVine, and also the defensive side of the ball. But he's certainly a talented player. That's also a lot of salary to stack up. If we're talking about, all right, Luke Kennard's an expiring, but even then, Smart, Kennard, Brandon Clark, stack up those three, and you're still not there to a deal for Zach LaVine because of how much he makes. So that I think is a bit of a challenge. Now I'd have to look and see where Memphis is at in terms of cap and all of that and how much they could actually absorb in a trade. But because I know they're not too far up there. Ja only making 36 compared to some other stars. Des Bane making 34, 25 for Jaren Jackson. But this is a team where I don't know that Zach LaVine is the right fit for them. He could certainly help them on the offensive end, but I'd be a bit concerned about the defense.
Yeah, that's mostly how I feel too. I just wanted to bring him up because we talk about literally every other known
Sure.
star wing on the on the market, even guys like Kuz and Grant. But yeah, I do agree with you for the most part. Do you think there's any chance, last thing here, that they maybe try to look for another player? We mainly focused on, like I said, a 3-4. Maybe do you think there's any chance they look for another guard or something like that that could be switchable?
Yeah, maybe a guard. I mean, just a perimeter play. Now, you don't doesn't have to be a point guard because I think Scottie Pippen Jr. has been legitimately
Yeah,
really good
absolutely.
for them this season. I don't think that's something that you have to do. But between Ja and Dez and Scottie Pippen Jr., I think you've got something at the guard position there. But yeah, I mean, it could still be if you were to add a high level guard. I think that would be certainly interesting if you could get somebody, especially that's a two-way player and that can play on or off the ball. I think that would be the key for Memphis. They could add somebody like that. Okay, like if we're talking, obviously our Lakers just saw him, but like a Jalen Suggs style player, that would be that would be
Isn't
really good.
that
Although in theory, isn't that what Marcus Smart
I
was
was just
supposed to
about to
be?
say
So,
he's like Marcus Smart,
but it's just
basically,
younger,
but just
just
younger.
younger.
Yeah. So that's kind of a similar thing, I guess. But yeah, it's just kind of splitting hairs a little bit because we know that they need another forward there, ideally, if they're going to trade off Smart, somebody that can plug into that spot. Jalen Wells has been good for them, but I would like to add another, forward into that rotation at that point. But yeah, with what's available, honestly, realistically, I just don't know if they can get a star-ish player. I don't know if that's a
Yeah,
thing. Maybe they do have to try to get somebody like the Nets guys, like Cam or something like that, and that would fit perfect. That's not a bad
that would
decision.
be great.
That would be great, right? Like I don't. That's not a
Yeah,
bad decision. Maybe you have some injury
I
concerns a little bit with some of the other guys you may potentially target, but I mean, other than that, I think the fit's perfect.
I honestly like that better than the big names. I like that
Yeah.
better than Zach LaVine, than Brandon Ingram. I like that fit better for Memphis. But regardless, the big news, Marcus Smart is a guy that to really keep an eye on the upcoming trade market. Could find his way out of Memphis, and the Memphis Grizzlies, again, admirably, they've kept themselves afloat despite all these injuries. If they get healthy and they can add a piece using Marcus Smart's contract, they could really become a power in the Western Conference. So definitely a team to keep an eye on. Make sure you guys go check out our latest video too, and don't forget to subscribe right here to the Basketball Bulletin. Thank you again, everybody. We'll see you and stay safe.